When the song arrangement falls on the worship band to create, you need to understand the three basic building blocks of music. You need to know what they are, you need to know how to recognize them, and you need to know who in the band is responsible for bringing what part to the song arrangement. And I learned all this because of a book that I never wrote. Hi, I'm Dave Dolphin at practicalworshipblog.com, sharing ideas, tips, and practical advice for the everyday worship leader. And on this channel, we have weekly videos that help you lead a worship band and be a leader of people. So if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. A long time ago, Practical Worship was actually supposed to be a book. I don't think it was even called Practical Worship back then, but back in the 90s, I saw this need within worship ministries. The style was changing to a more drums and guitar based sound, and churches were pulling together new musicians and trying to figure out how to build song arrangements based on this new style. So I decided that I was going to write a book because at the time, YouTube wasn't a thing, Facebook wasn't a thing. I mean, the internet was barely a thing. Now, one of the people that I interviewed for this book was a guy named Kendall Combs. Kendall is this amazing guitar player and music producer here in the Oklahoma City area, but he's also one of the original members of Mercy Me, and he's played quite a bit with Charlie Hall back in the days when he was doing a lot with the Passion Conference. Now, I never did write that book, but there's a lot of things that I learned from that phone interview that stick with me to this very day. And one of those is thinking of music in terms of three basic building blocks, and they are rhythms, melodies, and atmospheres. A rhythm is pretty easy to understand. It's the beat. It's the feel of the song. It's the groove. We Will Rock You by Queen has a very distinct rhythm. And then there's driving songs like Glorious Day by Christian Stanfield or Your Grace Is Enough by Chris Tomlin that have that really driving four on the floor kick pattern. And then there's that swing feeling that happens with a song like Reckless Love or Good Good Father because of that 6/8 time signature. And melodies are a pretty easy thing to understand as well. These are the parts of the song that we hum. Now, obviously, vocals are going to be a major contributor to the melodies of a song, but it could also be a signature guitar lick or a piano part. Basically, if you find yourself whistling it after you've heard it, it's a melody. The third building block is a bit trickier to wrap your head around, and it's this idea of atmospheres. It's the tones and the musical notes that you don't necessarily hear, but you feel, and you would notice if they disappeared. They provide extra textures to a song. In a way, it's like the mortar of a brick wall. If the bricks are the things that you notice, like rhythms and melodies, then atmospheres are what fill in the cracks of the sonic space and makes things feel full and lush. The mortar is what gives the brick wall its strength, but it's not the first thing that you notice. So going back to my book idea, the reason why I felt like it was important to write this book is that not only there was this shift in musical style, there was also a shift in how songs were being arranged. Prior to this shift, the most common instrumentation might be a piano player that was playing out of a hymnal or an orchestra that was playing out of music. In both cases, the musicians were just playing what someone else had already written and arranged for them. Someone else had already figured out the rhythms and the melodies and the atmospheres, and the musicians on the stage were just playing the part that was given to them. Compare that to the modern worship band that gets a chart that's essentially the lyrics to the song and then some chords written above some of the words, and the task of figuring out the song arrangement primarily falls on the worship band. Now, you might be able to reverse engineer something that you hear on an MP3, but you still need to know what you're listening for. So that was the original purpose of this book, was to help these new modern worship bands understand the basic building blocks of a pop or a rock song arrangement and then apply it to their Sunday morning context. Not only is it important to understand what these basic building blocks are, the rhythms and the melodies and the atmospheres, it is important to be able to recognize them, and you need to know who in the band is responsible for them. When it comes to rhythms, the most obvious place to look for them is going to be the drums, but they can come from other places too. Sometimes the strumming pattern of the acoustic guitar is crucial to the song's feel, or maybe it's the rhythm electric guitar that's chucking these eighth notes along with the drums as they're building out of the bridge into the final chorus. Sometimes the main source of the rhythm can actually come from the vocals. Taylor Swift has actually made an entire career around this recently. If you listen to anything on Reputation or 1989, notice how much of the song's feel comes from how Taylor sings the lyric. That vocal might just be one note throughout the entire chorus, but where Taylor puts those notes rhythmically really makes that song work. When it comes to melodies, the most obvious place to look for them is going to be with the singers, but a melody might be given to a guitar player or to a piano. It might be at an intro, it might be the turn coming out of the first chorus going into the second verse, or it might be an interlude right before the bridge. In the song Who You Say I Am, there is this instrumental melody that happens in between the first and the second sung lines of the chorus that's pretty important to how this song sounds. Again, if you find yourself humming it, then it's a melody and it's a crucial part to what makes that song work. Now, atmospheres are a little bit harder to reverse engineer from the original recording because there's something that you don't necessarily hear. You feel them, you only notice when they're missing. Pads are a fantastic source of atmospheres. If you have a keyboard player in your band, the easiest way to add this texture is to have your keyboard player play a pad sound. But atmospheres can come from the swells that the lead electric guitar player is doing with their volume pedal, or maybe what the rhythm electric guitar is doing by ringing out power chords in a big chorus. This is why the pads that you download and play on your iPad have become so popular, because it's a really easy way to add an atmosphere, to add texture to the song that you're doing, especially if your band is small. I've actually done a video on how to use these pads in your service. I'm going to link that up over here in the description down below. Understanding how these building blocks come together to make a song arrangement and to make a song work is especially crucial when your band is small and you don't have all the members to recreate all the parts that are in the original recording. For example, if you don't have a drummer, then the rhythms are going to primarily come probably from the acoustic guitar, which means that the strum patterns become that much more important. Or maybe the piano has a signature melody line that is in the original recording, but it's more important for your keyboard player to play the pad, to play that atmosphere, and maybe give that melody to a guitar player. Or maybe if you don't have enough people, maybe you decide that the melody lick is not as important as the atmosphere and you just punt the melody altogether. If you like this video, there's more where this came from. Consider subscribing to the channel. That way you're notified when new videos are added every single week. And for more practical advice from me personally, there's a small little ebook called 20 Things I Wish I Knew 20 Years Ago. It's the advice that I've learned over the last 20 years of doing music ministry, and you can download it right now for free at practicalworshipblog.com.